dark bucket. I've been deep into the darkness. I've been close to some dark mothers. I never met anyone like you. What's wrong with you? Come back. Stop what you're doing. Be among us here where everything makes sense. So the truth is that there's no plan for what we're all going through, and I've asked around trying to figure out the logistics of this reading, and nobody quite had an answer for me. So I don't know if I'm stepping over the boundaries, but I learned that what had happened to Matt from Brody, and in the moments after I walked across the street and sat in a restaurant and wrote something really quickly for him, and I hadn't written in months, and I felt like I could read a little tiny bit of it. A disastrous performance for Matt Henriksen. And the tranquil hills and gin look like a drag, and somehow a dog has taken itself and its tail considerably away into the mountains or sea or sky, leaving behind me, Wag. That's John Berryman, Dream Song 14, a poem that Matt had introduced me to in a different way than I understood it before. In crisis we soften, we don't realize it's happening immediately, but we do. Our bones, our muscles, our skin and limbs, even our toes like tiny hospices become soft like pillows, as soft as pillows. If we can think of crisis, of loss, and of grief as acts of grace on the body, we might survive our death. John Berryman said wag, and in that moment I understood poetry with you. If thou desire rest, desire not too much, pink Converse, pink floss, pink grapes. I sat on the sidewalk to call back the mutual friend who told me the first thought I had that fucker peed on my pink Converse while drunk. He trapped me, and for a minute I escaped inside me as a noun, but only for a minute. We never talked. Our text thread, the nuance, the mistake, and the immediacy, a restaurant I wandered into like floating, offered burden blessed by a priest, a real one, a real fucking priest, they assured me. I shouted something through my body, a soft word of what, if not. Whitney Houston's I Have Nothing is the first song I heard. Orange Juice is the first drink. I don't know where you went, but I'm sure I'll find out more soon. Your sweet wife, your gorgeous babies, your calm, soft voice, all poems as you wanted will wander and float for longer than you'll want to know about. One last thing, I didn't get to edit this, but on the way out to Fayetteville, I was driving by a field, and a piano was in the field, and it looked like it could drop from the sky, and I really wanted to add that into this poem, but, time. Thanks, y'all. This is beautiful. Thank you.
I'm going to follow Esther's reading from the phone. I want to start with a poem by someone else, because I think that was part of Matt's legacy, is bringing many voices in. And I'm going to start with a poem that I read in public for the first time at a poetry orgy reading that Matt organized, and that was written by a Virginite who started writing while he was in prison. It's called Feeling Fucked Up. Lord, she's done left me, done packed up and split, and I with no way to make her come back, and everywhere the world is bare, bright, bone, white, crystal sand glistens, dope, death, dead, dying, and jiving, drove her away, made her take her laughter, and her smiles, and her softness, and her midnight sighs. Fuck Coltrane and music, and clouds drifting in the sky. Fuck the seas and trees, the sky, and birds, and alligators, and all the animals that roam the earth. Fuck Marx and Mao, fuck Fidel, and Nkrumah, and democracy, and communism. Fuck snack and pot, and red ripe tomatoes. Fuck Joseph, fuck Mary, fuck God, Jesus, and all the disciples. Fuck Bannon, Nixon, and Malcolm. Fuck the revolution. Fuck freedom. Fuck the whole motherfucking thing. All I want now is my woman back, so my soul can sing. That's Everett White. I'm just going to read one short poem of Matt's called Ruled by the Absence of Knowing. Perhaps a strangled doll should trouble a dad who walks foot to foot, who bounces check to check and rent disengaged thought from platitude, a dad who spends his time eating what the kid doesn't eat and watching what the kid watches and walking as far as he can convince the kid is far enough for now. A dad doesn't use metaphors to fix the broken doll or to explain that when the bike path gets steep, a dad can only sometimes carry a kid, a bike, and a busted doll.
I'm going to read two short poems from Ordinary Son. This first one is called Ghost. Heaven must subject itself to the city for the city to lose function. The throng of sparrows and one gutter pipe must be all they've seen. The multitudes ruled from their professions and thus professing. Hollyhocks taking a light are merciless. God dreamt of the professor of simony, saw the final image on the last lost reel of Satan's nightmares. No one deemed God safe after that. He took to wandering Brooklyn with aimless pleasure, looking for bridges to cross, crossing and returning. He'd lost his desperation, and without it, how could civilization admire itself? This was the beginning of the third year, no one called for anyone. So it is writ. And this is my personal favorite of Matt's. It's called Insomnia. I had the busted leg of a plastic chair to pillow a highway sign's dream. Once a person on his roof begins to think about saying fuck you to particulars, the only blessing is a stagnant block in the middle of a dead neighborhood in a city that has been nowhere since before you or I were born. And who and what are we, after words, but mourners signing a petition at someone's grave for better dreams, better moments, better orgasms, when most of us would rather just sleep well more often. Jesus, why must it be so late, so bright, and so early?
So when I was thinking about what to read, I was thinking about what I would want to read to Adele, and I realized that, when I first met Matt, I was closer to Adele's age than I am to my age now. And he told me a lot of times a lot of things that I absolutely must read. And the first thing was a poem by Larry Levis called Anastasia and the Sandman. It might be Anastasia, I don't know. In my head it's Anastasia. But then I read it again, and it's still a really beautiful poem, but it mentions Stallman a lot of times, and it just didn't seem quite right. So I'm not reading that poem, but, he had a way of telling me you had to read something. So I'm not reading it, but I'm not reading it also, So I'm going to read The Like the Dead Sea by Frank Stanford, who was also another person that Matt told me way before we all knew that we had to read it. There are many people who come back after the doctor has smoothed the sheet around their body and left the room to make his call. They die, but they live. They are called the dead who lived through their deaths, and among my people they are considered wise and honest. They float out of their bodies and light on the ceiling like a moth, watching the efforts of everyone around them. The voices and the images of the living fade away. A roar sucks them under the wheels of darkness without pain. Off in the distance, there is someone like a signalman swinging a lantern. The light burns, a white flower, it
it becomes very intense, like music. They see the faces of those they love, the truly dead who speak kindly. They see their father sitting in a field. The harvest is over and his cane chair is mended. There is a towel around his neck, the odor of bay rum. Then they see their mother standing behind him with a pair of shears. The wind is blowing, she's cutting his hair. The dead have told these stories to the living. And I had another one, that's on there too.
Hey. Hey.
So this, I'm gonna do my best to read this. This is a poem that Matt sent to me this past summer with the caveat that he wasn't happy with it, but he wanted me to know he could write nice things sometimes. So it's called Plane Tree Epistolary for Brody and Max. Today I learned the plane tree flowers both sexes, as we do. The American sycamore reminds me this place is no country, and God is only the accidental radiance in a stained glass window when we happen to sit in a church or walk in a forest or lie down on someone else's lawn, where trees grow up out of where we are held captive by gravity or awe, where trees burnish their limbs up to a sky unable to stop blinking light. There are rules such as a man past 40 cannot just now be learning that rainbow is not the term for how sunlight teaches the mind inside the body to purr again. There are rules such as a man past 40 should know the trees in his yard and calculate their properties as if they were mortgaged against his being, but that is a world for some other person. Not this person whose skin is rare with sunburn while writing you this unpunctuated piece of news on a planet that turns constantly away from the people ignoring its constant declarations of dappled light and dappled dark, its constant limitations of fields on fire, of people on fire, of music faded into walls of wood and stone where no one lives in bombed out houses. My friend who is dead said that no one disappears into history. And you are right too, that you are at once erased in dancing, and we are at once dancing and grieving in the fire that drapes us as a flag to wear as long as we can stand, as decoys so that others might be allowed to speak their way out of a fire that is not their flag.
We're going to take a short sort of musical break. We have the cellist Matt Nagerkurtz, I hope I'm saying that right. He's going to play for a little bit. I'm going to make the lineup for the second half, and yeah, everybody refresh your drinks and listen to music.
Don't let her crack her skull open. Oh my god.
Make sure you don't need to stay.
Wow. Oh my god. Shadow.
I think we're gonna get started again in another 1 or 2 minutes. You want to try it? Fresh drinks.
Can we say country roads? Yeah, I want to say that. Well, not on the mic.
On the mic.
Does he have that?
Say that before your piece.
West Virginia. Virginia, mama. It's a joke, by the way. We don't actually want to sing this. Take me home, country road, to the place I belong, West Virginia, bound mama, take me home, country road. Does anyone know any other lyrics? All my memories gathered round her. Wait, no, it's mine's lady stranger to the blue. Dark and I don't know. LMAO. What is it? I just teardrops in my eye. Country roads, take me home to the place I belong, West Virginia, mama, take me home, country road.
Oh, no. Yeah. So hey, I'm Anne Marie. I'm just here to pave the way right now. She doesn't need the way to be paved. Because Matthew gave us what we need, right? And we're ready. And it's swear word sad. So swear word sad. Right, babe? So, I don't know if I'm pretty sure Matthew was never allowed to do anything he did. Matthew took me to poetry readings since I was born. Like my whole life, like he's always been a poet. He's always like raised me, taken care of me. He's like when I'm sick, like he taught me how to like do laundry. He taught me how to like put clothes on, like he did it all, right? But I'm not a musician, I'm not a poet. And the thing I hated the most was I'd show my poetry and he'd correct it. Mood with a red pen. I was sitting in a coffee shop at Adele's age, and I'm like, I'm just trying to talk about my feelings, Matthew. He's like, but you don't know how to spell. Okay, so just the fact that I have the floor for a minute, I'm gonna say the first poem. Not the first poem I wrote, but like the first most important poem I wrote. It's called Searching for the Right Radio Station. An endless search for contentment. A hopeless journey for meaning. A discovery of truths unknown to all. An enlightenment of mysteries. A discovery of souls. Going down the endless road with unrhymed songs and meaningless battle. Going down the road with endless shit. And one day I wake up and realize, who was I? Who were you? Who were we? And end the search for contentment. So, 2 poems. Atherton, Wisconsin, and Parkway in Bennett. My hometown, my corner block. I've always had this like weird premonition of this poem. And it means a lot to me, and I don't know, like I wanted to say something somewhere today, and this is where Matthew lives, right here with all of you. I have been to poetry readings with him since I was Adele's age. And he started them at fountains in bars in New York. And, we used to go to poetry readings with like, everyone was like 75, but me and Matt. We loved them. So this is Appleton, Wisconsin. Held immaculately by tunes of lawnmowers and metal chains. An avenue lined, withered clippings and weeds proceeded wrong. Filth congregated endlessly in miniature disasters, broken twigs and crushed anthills, sweepings arranged to vanish. When people lied, the stars came back and joyfully. Though they contrived to burn them and sing hymns, it was as if the world echoed from a well. I shouted, all parables lead to hierarchy. This is terrible to admit. Speaking backwardly has no limit. That's our childhood, and here's our home, Parkway and Bennett. My favorite home I've ever known, Parkway and Bennett. The house is darkened quietly, as if the edges had been rained on. A welt of light remained behind a hedge at the corner house where the mannequin stood. That was my crazy family you saw. That was the grass that looked burned, and those were the screams of our happiness that you missed out. Thank you. It's all Matthew. Oh. Come on, babe. Let's give a little beatnik for a dog. Okay. Let's give a dog some beatnik.
You can't do that.
Come on. We're all
All you
over.
can do is win.
I'm over 40.
All you can do is win it now.
You ready, Mom?
Hi. So Matt was my dad. So it was kind of a big part of my life. Okay. Yeah, it's like
And again, give a whole lot of
Is that right in there?
I'm a smart.
So one of my earliest memories is at my house, and we were having a party where we were finding books, and I didn't want to go to bed because I just want to be with the poets. And so I grew up with this idea of poetry, and it ends up being weird with other kids when they don't, understand poetry, and then think poetry is just rhymes. I would get so mad at school when they would have an assignment and they would make us cut out shapes and write words in it and act as if that was poetry. And I would go home to my dad and they made us do this poetry, but you're a poet. Yeah, that's not real poetry. But me and him had a thing, and we would go on these long rants about philosophy. It was just a thing that we would do. And we both decided, even though we both love poetry, that in the end poetry is stupid. And that in the end it's really meaningless and we're just filling a void. Which is a good thing, I think, because if everything's doomed, then why not be happy? So that was me and my dad's philosophy most of the time. And he was a very caring person. as you guys all know, even if he didn't see one get F points, he's kind. Probably one of also the most annoying people I've ever interviewed.
Yes. Speak, Adele, yes.
Rock.
So annoying. Don't you wanna punch him?
Sometimes, yeah. I did punch him a few times.
Yeah. Hey, he taught me to punch too.
And so I grew up with like this voice for poetry. I will at school talk as if I'm speaking at a poetry reading when really I'm just talking to a bunch of 12-year-olds who don't, understand why we're doing an assignment for grades. And yeah, so I'm gonna read a poem that's kind of like that reading, I think. My dad actually showed me this one. He hated his books so much. Oh my gosh. He did not want me to read them.
Now, what I say, I was like, Matthew, why'd you publish them? If you don't want your daughter to read them, why'd you publish them?
But this was one poem that he showed me, and he said, so he had favorite poem, of course, Kabe's Window, and then this one, The Story of God. And so this is the poem I'm going to read. I texted my ex, and after a few days, she responded with a nothing. That brought me back to nothing. I realized I'm in love with poetry. This afternoon, a blue jay flew up from the road and away from the car, then back at the car and immediately into the window. I said so to my daughter in her car seat, and she laughed and said, "Daddy, that's a trick." And I tried to explain there are things we don't see because of where we are sitting. I said sometimes birds find cars. And because I'm in love with poetry and not my own words, I don't want what I said to my daughter to mean anything. But unlike my ex, my daughter responds, laughing, and she doesn't believe me when I say birds can fly in cars. In her laughing and my inability to explain one small possible reality, sort of let the car float for a moment above the daylight into a thicker liquid light. The metaphor can't relate to me if the initial image is just a trick, as my daughter says. We bought squirt guns, and she ran around the park shooting trees. She shot up the trees and ran all over the grass and climbed down to the creek and took off her shoes and walked in the water and threw the biggest rock she could lift from the creek back into the creek bed. I watched her as I held my phone, and I wanted to tell her that she is a trick, that blue jays are not real and the creek is not full of water, that she cannot throw a rock into the same creek once. When she has grown tired of the wind beating her car as she drives on the interstate away from disaster, I can't imagine how I imagine. She will see that the past is empty of us, and the world unfolds until it isn't a world, just lent from someone else's hamper. But how do we throw that away when it's the world? And so that was a poem. And I have another one that I wrote in reply to it. I read this poem to him after he read me this poem. And he said this was probably the best poem I've ever written. And so,
If I'm corrected, I might give you.
Oh no, he didn't.
You're perfect.
I'm perfect. Thank
Grammatically, I mean.
Well, not grammatically. Sam was
Yeah.
Sam. Autocorrect.
You're amazing.
So this is called The Story of Me, reference to the story of God, because, and so this is it, the story of me. I have been looking through my father's poetry, realistically this time. It brought me back to nothing. I realized I am remembering again. He would tell me the truth and I would shake my head. No, that's untrue. I am stubborn, always have been. I'm always right. So then my father tells me. He tells me of the bluebird that flew, he is tricking me. And he tries to explain there are things we don't see because of where we are sitting. But he forgets that I am stubborn. And because I am stricter than a stone and not a mere melted candle, I know what my father had said to me didn't mean anything. But unlike melted candles, I respond, laughing and saying that he is a trick. Birds don't fly in cars. He's unable to explain meaningless words to ears that won't remember what he said. He then let the car float for a moment above the daylight into a thicker liquid white light. The metaphor can't relate to me, and the initial image is just a trick, as my father says. We bought squirt guns, and I ran around the park shooting trees. I shot up the trees and ran all over the grass, and climbed down to the creek bed and took off my shoes and walked in the water. And I threw the biggest rocks I could lift from the creek back into the creek bed. He watches me holding his phone, and he wants to tell me that I am a trick. The blue jays are not real, and the creek is not full of water, that I cannot throw a rock in the same creek once. He does not remember how stubborn I am. He does not remember my skin's thick, but my mind is thicker. He can't imagine now if he imagines. I will see that the past is empty of us, and the world unfolds until it isn't a world, just lit from someone else's hamper. But he does not see I am much more than lit.
Yes! Yes!
So like all great poetry readings, it's not over until the crazy guy grabs the microphone.
In the pajama pants. I'm the crazy guy. She's the crazy guy. You're the one that's following. Del here, he's the crazy guy.
This is called Almost a Prose Poem with a Henriksen pitch. We had a swing set in the backyard. A 90s metal mass-produced swing set. 2 swings and a seesaw. Soon my brother and I discovered that the swing set made a better soccer ball. He put me on his shoulders and I took down the swings and we took turns. Him being goalie, me shooting. Me being goalie, him shooting. Soon we developed a tournament. A penalty tournament. We each picked our countries. And we battled. The next step was that we made this tournament into a cup. It was my brother's job to make the brackets, and my job to build the trophy. I asked my brother, how should I build this trophy? He said, it must have a foundation, it must have a pillar, and it must have a reward. And so out of paper and tape, I built this trophy, and we battled. It was the paper cup. coveted paper cup was the reward as we battled in our backyard every chance we had. And the pride was that you got to keep it on your dresser, this coveted paper cup. My brother's favorite country to choose, and they won several paper cups, was Italy. But we got to the 10th paper cup, and it was an epic one. I had chosen a dark horse, Iceland. And it was a Wisconsin summer, July, humidity. Iceland, it wasn't favorable for Iceland, and they were the underdogs. But Iceland made it to the finals of the paper cup against the dreaded Italy, who had already been able to mount that trophy on the dresser 3 times in 10 years. Well, it came down to the final shot. Italy was up. All they had to do was make this shot. My brother hit an incredible shot. I dove with all my might because the underdogs needed to win that day. Iceland needed to win that day. It hit off the post and hit the seesaw and bounced out. Thus became the great controversy of the seesaw. Matthew said, "It's in." I said, "It's out." Matthew said, "It's in." I said, "It's out." We went to the dinner table. Mom and Dad didn't want to hear it. We tried to present our arguments. We presented them to Anne. Anne was so easily swayed at that point because she was the youngest sister. Her opinion didn't matter. Finally, after over 24 hours of argument, of disagreement. Now, mind you, both Matthew and I were excellent mathematicians, and we hated it. So we got out the measuring tape, we got out the rulers, the angle, because we had to decide if it was going to break the plane of the goal if the teeter-totter wasn't there. Now, if it went straight through and hit the teeter-totter, it's a goal, right? We argued, and then finally, yes, you all know what happened, a redo. How else could you say such an argument? We had our redo, and Iceland. I saved the shot. Iceland was the champions, with an asterisk. And now that cup sat on my dresser, but it plagued us, right? We argued, we discussed, and finally, we decided to go and get my dad's tools out and take the teeter-totter down and recycle the paper cup and start again. And this time, we decided, because I got to build the paper cup again, and we built it with 3 pillars. So what I want to say is, I'm gonna take off that win for Iceland, and I'm ready to concede. Italy won that paper cup. Love you. That was written back in 1992. I just tried to came out of memory.
Hi, my name is Carrie Laurie, and I'm a poet. I'm not part of this poetry community, but I feel so grateful to be here with all of you. Matt and Adam and many of their friends were such a model to me about what poetry community should be and about what being an open reader of poetry was. Matt and Adam were some of the first people to ever publish me. And I don't write poetry anything like the 2 of them. And I noticed that, and it really meant something to me. It taught me something about just thinking widely about how people think and how they engage with the world. And I was going to read a poem of Matt's that I really love, but I looked at this book that's at the front, and I noticed that it was dedicated to the memory of Molly Brodak. And Molly was a very close friend of mine that we lost 2 years ago. And Molly was really similar to Matt in some ways, in that she also really hated her books. And I think really struggled with how much possibility that she saw in poetry and how I think sometimes that felt so overwhelming to her, but was also just so liberating. And so I want to read this poem, and it's the poem that I see the most of hers, and sometimes it kind of actually really makes me mad. Because I think, like Matt, there's so much in all of the poems. There's so much in all of them, and I want everyone to see all of it. But at the same time, what I see when people read this poem of hers is what I see when we all talk about Matt's work, which is that we feel seen by it, and we feel free to be ourselves, and we feel free to feel that poetry is hope. It just is. And so this is a poem by Molly Brodak, and it's called In the Morning Before Anything Bad Happens. The sky is open all the way. Workers upright on the line like spokes. I know there is a river somewhere, lit, fragrant, golden mist, all that, whose irrepressible birds can't believe their luck this morning, and every morning. I let them riot in my mind a few minutes more before the news comes. So thank you, Matt, and thank you, Molly, and thank all of you.
Hi, my name is Nick Sturm, and Matt and I had a correspondence about 10 years ago at a point when I felt really like I needed someone to show me what it looked like to be serious and have joy at the same time. And Matt was really good at being that kind of person. And the interview that I did with him, I think it was the first interview I've ever done with anybody, and it was published on this website that doesn't exist anymore. And when I heard that Matt had died, I immediately went to this old computer and I found it and I read it again. And I wanted to read you a thing that Matt said to me in that conversation. I'm certainly not jealous of that awe because I experience it constantly, especially around my child Adele. My life has been fortunate. Even the suffering has been fortunate, and that I've suffered only a little, and the bit I could not contend with turned into poems. If I have consciously contributed to my happiness that arrived out of my commitment to retaining a childlike awe, I turned my back on opportunities and severed myself from connections that might have led to an easier life. But I never saw any point in living for anything other than poetry and family and awe at the pervasive beauty that surrounds us. I remind myself occasionally that I am doing exactly what I set out to do as a high school student reading Allen Ginsberg and E.E. Cummings and Houseman while ignoring my math classes. I also remind myself that I knew I would be broke, and the wealth of poetry, art, friends, and experiences that have come in return far outweigh the difficulties I might have functioning in the larger society. Mostly, though, I do not have to remind myself, because I am happily reading HD or playing in a creek with Adele. I'm too busy discovering language and tadpoles to replace my awe with a more pragmatic way of seeing. The child, of course, electrifies that awe 1,000-fold, because they see a thing newly and react with bodily delight. Then I look anew at that thing and cherish it all the more for them seeing it too. That is exactly what poems do, or can do, when the poet allows psychological burdens and artistic impositions to fall away. We share an immense intimacy in the singular experience of the artistic. We share an intense intimacy in the singular experience of the poem. I would rather not evaluate a poem's imitation of nature, but prefer to appreciate its provocation of intimacy between poet and reader, or between poet and self. Art undoes us. Everything in this world undoes me. And as long as I can maintain that childishness, I won't have any regrets.
I met Matt and Kate at Nightmare Books, where I was working. It was a parade. I wondered if it was a Mardi Gras parade or a Pride parade. Before Dixon Street had really great parades. There were like maybe 20 people, but there was Adele in some sort of costume. And they came in to change their diaper, and there was no one in the bookstore, shock and awe. And if you remember those little bathrooms at Nightbird, I looked at them and I said, "No one's here, go to the couch. Change the diaper on the couch, it's fine, it's fine." By the end of that visit, though, I mean, Katie had gotten my email, Matt and I discussed a new translation of Madame Bovary, and that was it. You know, a lot of the poets in this room and artists I know, through my association with Matt, and I would say through him, sort of always introducing me, like, "Candace, she's brilliant." I was a bookstore employee and Montessori teacher who wrote poetry my whole life. And he saw it and he knew it. I never said it to him. he knew it. We remained friends. 10 years later, I'm going to have to lift up my glasses to read off my phone. And his children attend my preschool. I think one of the truest bonds between us was what he wrote in the thing that we heard previously, that sense of awe. I'm definitely an awe addict. And there's a way that we were into children, a heady way, even just the development of humanity in this weird way. We bonded over it, and he always brought the awe and the wonder. You know, he was a complicated person. I also want to say, so that was how I met him. Wednesday night, we had this amazing family engagement dinner at the preschool. These were my favorite things to be a part of. He'd always come and contribute and be warm, and we would go from table to table answering questions about what we knew about child development. And I have to say, he said it helped me marry to an expert, talking about Samantha. And I said, I know Matt through poetry, he's a poet. And he said, semi-retired. And I said, aren't poets always semi-retired? He laughed. I hadn't seen him in months in person, just in passing, like not to have a conversation. We gave each other this crazy long hug. And it was like the next day I got the call. So our friendship began in this weird like recognition of each other as people around children and parenting. And it ended this way. Like my last thing with him was saying, oh, your family, your kids, I love you. So that was really surreal for me, I have to say, but also very important for me. And I was going to read one of his poems, but I can't read them out loud even. The last time I read this poem was at my mother-in-law's service, and it's still true of the people I like to be with, and it's one of my favorites by Marge Piercy, and it is so right on about Matt Henriksen. So it's called To Be of Use. The people I love the best jump into work head first without dallying in the shallows and swim off with sure strokes almost out of sight. They seem to become natives of that element, the black, sleek heads of seals bouncing like half-submerged balls. I love people who harness themselves, an ox to a heavy cart, who pull like the water buffalo with massive patience, who strain in the mud and the muck to move things forward, who do what has to be done again and again. I want to be with people who submerge in the task, who go into the fields to harvest and work in a row and pass the bags along, who are not part of generals and field deserters, but move in a common rhythm when the food must come in or the fire be put out. The work of the world is common as mud. Botched, it smears the hand, crumbles to dust. But the thing worth doing well done has a shape that satisfies, clean and evident. Greek amphoras for wine or oil, Hopi vases that held corn are put in museums, but you know they were made to be used. The pitcher cries for water to carry, and a person for work that is real. Until I was at that point where we were stitching together the poetry. I was at that party and you did not report it.
I made yogurt with honey and sweetness in it to go to bed.
I remember.
Yay, Max.
Hello, everyone. My name is Max. Matthew Henriksen. I hope you can hear me. Speak louder. So he can hear you. If I just yell really loud, so he can hear me. I don't know, that man showed up for me in ways that very, very few people have ever shown up for me in my entire life. And as far as I can tell, he did that for a lot of people. So I'm going to read two of his poems and try really hard not to cry anymore. The first one is, yes?
You got this.
Oh, thank you. I love you. The first one is Clearings. 1. Hence a declension in the bucket's climb and sings forth the atmosphere. Not comfortable in clearings, the figures run to small shadows. Birds do not despair, drone strikes, for they have no minds, nor minds inclined. 2. I have seen language in which a fork takes its space above us. What we call anything does not matter. A rotting song becomes this us. The computer crashing elates the room with unexpected light. 3. Punctual always the raccoons, scratch and eat behind the walls. Last night I heard something kill something while I fixated on drone strikes in my Twitter feed. To do away with the sickness words carry, the penitent must penetrate doom as a joke penetrates a window. Naked in their shapes, every thought belongs to the floor in this room. The birds at 4 a.m. attach my reckoning to the cold, though it is June. And I remember other Junes, the way sobs do. Afterlife with a gentle afterword. All my time has been a read I dreamed in a blackout. It turns out every sun has been a different sun. Every sky has lied about continuity. Every blink has blanked the light behind. I figured myself against the horizon. One could see my shape only. Every face exists for at least one illusion. Somehow the light turns around, the face becomes a sun, the eyes become a sky. I am saying so directly to you, in your light which is blinking and burning will not burn out.
I thought I'd just close with this poem because I thought I was really clever quoting the last line, but everyone's been quoting the last line because it's such a great last line. And it's true. Kave's window. The song is tired, friend. In the aftermath of polyphonic fuck-ups. On a Thursday night with the wind out and the stars down, dead pigeons near a vodka bottle in the berm. When you come back, let's watch a movie. Hungarians dancing after closing time. The darkest choose mad disaster over terminal sorrow. I have come to believe the only good people are poor. In my stubborn religion, I deny all contrary evidence. I tried believing nothing, and it got me nothing. But I woke up after 10 minutes sleep in the apartment you gave me for 2 weeks. Only a friend would not ask me to describe the trees out your window in winter light, orange and blue and white light in the ice. Because you have been there, Kaveh. Because you have slept in that bed and lived to tell about it. I saw the squirrel this morning on the roof below your window, and for a moment I wanted to say something to anyone. And I suppose that is where religion begins. The house we must enter when we close the final door. There is no world until all our friends arrive there.
Thank you.
Oh, wow, that light won't turn on. Hey, friend, come on. So the thing about my brother, you, come on. My daughter is with your parents and I'm with you. So, the thing about Matthew is that his whole world and what he brought me up in was about poetry readings. And if you're tired and done and you're ready to go home, it's been a long day, you guys. But there's so many people that have so many words and poetry that Matthew taught them and they want to share. And so let's have a little time for an open mic. And if you want to go, like Katie says, this space is cool, you know, we're all cool. It's not rude, you're disrespectful if it's your time to go home. But if you want to stay and listen to the people that Matthew touched, here we go. My little Ireland. Are you ready? I'm sorry. And Matthew was shy too. I don't know if you guys know that, but Matthew didn't really like people.
I think Matthew loved everyone he ever met, just like myself. Let the first breath be taken. Let it be that even after a first breath has been taken, here on earth beneath, a second first breath will be taken in heaven someday, an even greater feat. For those of us who don't know anything, a book titled The Absence of Knowing just feels like home. On page 49 and 50 of this book, if only money would die, we could find a numb beginning in a blanket of material, and our children could march beyond us into a world that spins only light. What holds us from holding our children is money and the law and the police who defend property and who may someday defend me from my child, as if food or land or children could be property. Matt's alphabet. All the things you are. A candle wrapped in barbed wire. The bee that sings the folly of fences and fields on fire. A bicycle of broken glass, the woodwind cadenza of a scene by a brook. An ear of sorrow hears a dove beyond ghosts of gunfire. Emma Goldman thought about entropy and cobwebs. The earth under your eyelids. Hades has enough hands and edges to last a lifetime. Poppies appear on the projector screen. The lawnmower does not know about your ocean. Dear public transit, please tonsure the traffic. Your vocabulary sounds like the voice of a vine. Waters wax the weeds, and an altar of worms begs the question. Dug up the earth underground, danced around and hugged it, as if there were no wounds between us. This distance is an illusion. All the things we are, like the paper cup, to breathe with each other.
Yes.
I can't help but think of a poem I wrote, probably indirectly actually thinking about Matt, and it's titled Save the Children. And this is for Adele, who is wearing a crown of paper cup. To the paper cups and Adele. Save the children. The child inside hides wider ideas of love. Thank you.
I'm gonna go up. My friend said she'll go up if I go up. Yeah. I think I need to read something. Do I need to read something? Yeah. Okay, I'll find one that I like. What is Adele? What? Yeah. Mom and I are listening. Okay. So one thing that I noticed a lot about this reading is that we talk a lot about how my dad was. But I don't really remember him as the way he's talked about, because most people here haven't seen him in a long time, but I would see him every day. He would drive me to school, we would have long conversations. And so I think that he's not so dramatic as he speaks, if that's what I would say. He was more, I think, talking about delusions, which was spoken a lot about in these poems, isn't how he thought of it anymore. He still thought of the world as some big illusion, as lit someone's hamper, but he didn't, he didn't see it as, he thought of that, but he didn't need it to be that way anymore. He didn't need to think about that because he cared so much about people, and not just specifically people, but he cared about family, and I think that's what he decided to live the rest of his life out as, being with family. And we would talk at school, and he would talk about how he despised everything. He hated open mics so much.
You know, he started them.
Well, he liked them when we were kids, but not for adults. He hated adults. Oh my gosh. So many rants about how
He
adults
hated everybody.
No, he loved children. He liked kids.
Cause I was like, right.
Yeah, but he hated everyone. But he loved them all. He just hated them too. He was a very confusing person. One moment he'd be crying and the next he'd be joking. So, yeah. Anyway, this poem is really short, and it's the first poem of my dad's I'd ever read. And it was the only one I knew for a very long time. I think not until a few months ago had I read any other poem of his or her. So this one's called Baby. It kind of sucks. Baby. Bring the fatted worm to the altar. I will pin down the skin. The body open, what you imagine. An orphan cannot say the father is no man. A worm cannot say, no, don't do this. But the fatted baby will say, when she's older, I don't remember what my father cut for me. Yes, yeah, compare me to worm. So, yeah, that was just fun.
Dad, do you have another of your own?
Of my own?
Or just like speak to me in heart.
I have another poem that he liked a lot on my phone. He made me read it at this poetry reading.
Yeah, I know the feeling.
But notes.
Actually, he more edited me and told me like.
This one's called The Boy and the Tumor. I didn't like it very much. He loved it. So I haven't read it in a while, so it might be bad. I feel like a hypocrite going to the point. Don't worry about it.
Hey, he always did too.
Yeah, he was probably the biggest hypocrite.
Yeah, and he felt like that, but everyone's like, no, Matthew. Like when he read poetry to like 70-year-olds, like he was like just like you, and they were like, your mind is like really beautiful.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Shut up, Auntie.
So this one's called The Boy and the Tumor. The last time I read it, people thought it was actually about a tumor. The last time people read it, people thought it was actually about a tumor. It's not about a tumor, it's a metaphor. It's a shocker. Which is The question had been foaming on the boy's mouth for a while now. He was never quite sure when to ask it, when it should be said, so it stayed like an illness in the boy's brain, just as a tumor. It stayed tight in his mind every second of every minute of every day. It kept him awake at night. But the boy didn't mind. The boy didn't mind at all. In fact, he was grateful. Now he knew no monster stood above his bed while he slept. He never felt lonely anymore because the tumor always stayed inside his mind. So the boy didn't bother to ask the question in fear that if he did, he would be alone again. He feared that a hole would grow inside him where the tumor once stayed, and so the boy let the tumor stay. Truly, the boy never felt alone again, but it took all his might, all his power to keep the tumor entertained. He pushed away his family, his friends, the ones he cared about, because if he did, the tumor would no longer stay.
Oh my God, Adele. What's that down?
And when the boy was lonely, the tumor claimed, "You cannot be alone, for I am here, therefore you must not be lonely." So the boy only nodded and agreed with the tumor. The boy had long forgotten the question of his life. He was not sure even if there was a question. The only evidence was the mess that had been left behind, and the boy did not know who made the mess. Was it him or the tumor? Soon there was no longer a boy, only the tumor, and the tumor rejoiced, eating up what was left of the boy's life and leaving none for later. The tumor had won. Everything had gone to plan except one thing. The tumor felt no guilt for the boy, only remorse for not knowing the question that had invented it. The tumor looked through what had been left of the boy, hoping to find a hint. But the only way to come to a conclusion is to throw away all refuting evidence. the tumor began to wonder what the boy was really like. Before the tumor had come and taken over his every thought and every move, an obsession came to the tumor. It searched the earth over and back looking for something, but the damage had already been done, and the tumor found guilt in his actions, something never felt by it before. The tumor began to regret and began to think, if only it had thought of something to do first, something that could make both it and the boy happy. The tumor wished it had never been or done anything to the boy. And so the boy grew on the tumor, and none rejoiced.
Holy cow, Adele, are you kidding me? You are such a grown up. What do you... You want me to call you here? Here. Please. I'm fine. No, that doesn't. Eat next.
Thank you for coming, everybody. Anyway, we're basically going to.
How do you know you like all
I can't tell you anything like Sarah, like,
I think that people, when that's when that's been filled, they're gonna turn you. Yes. That's what she said.
yeah, we can get it less than it was like this week I was thinking I was going to read it out loud, and I was like, oh, not bad.